first.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We're going straight ahead.
Straight ahead, okay.
This way.
Run over by the
Excellent.
All right. Good to see you. Good seeing
All
you
right,
too.
come on. Guys.
Well, I was just up on the soapbox. I was the first one. I warmed them up for you.
All right, man.
We're in the
I'll
move.
tell you what. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
Let me do my job first. Okay?
We're going this way. We're doing this way. We're gonna. Sorry. We're pushing to the right. Right and right. How are you?
Hi, Joe.
Hey, man, how are you?
Good.
I tell you what. There's hope, man.
We're hoping.
There's hope for change.
Yeah.
There's hope for change.
Actually, we're following you.
This could ruin your name.
I know. Back up a little bit. That's all right. You have been back behind the House chamber in 2003.
Oh, God love you.
And I forgive you.
So, thank you.
That speech yesterday you could give from now on until the election.
What's your name?
Carol Martin.
Carol Martin, how are you?
I know you.
I'm Jill's husband. She's here somewhere.
Oh, good.
Okay, I'm supposed to. Hey, man, how are you? Good to see. What's your name? Well, come on, let's turn around. We'll get a picture taken. Is that mommy? Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to see you. You like the fair? What do you like best? The roller coaster. I thought maybe.
Sir, I'm going to pull you this way. Take you around the other side.
Going this way?
Yeah, we're going to around this way. Perfect. We're going to walk with our Hawkeye right here. We're going to walk down. We can just... Why don't you walk?
Are we walking over?
We're going to keep walking.
Hi, how are you?
Vice President.
Good to see you. How are you?
Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you to go to your left this way just so we don't...
Thank you.
Good to see you, man. How are you? Hey, man. Star Wars.
May I take a photo of you with him right now?
Jedi?
Ashley, can we do this picture right here? Yeah, of course. Ashley's going to help you do this. He's going to come right there. You can stay where you are. This camera's ready to. I'll hit you with both. If you want to sit right there, I'm going to have him come right between the two of you. Can we do that? Sure.
Together, so. Thank you.
Ashley,
Good to see you guys.
Sir, we're going to take a quick photo right here.
These two ladies would love their photo.
God love you.
I'm from Indianola.
You drove it? Yeah.
Yeah, you drove our pickup.
Oh, that's right. You're kidding me.
No, Don's sitting over there.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, yes, so.
How are you?
Gotta win.
Yes.
I'm going to give it to Devil. With your help, I will.
Well, we're
With your help, I
going to
win.
help as much as we can.
Oh, God love you. Thank you.
Yes,
Right this way.
We're going to push this way. If I can just create a little bit of space, please.
There you go, man.
There's a little bit of a dip right here. Perfect. We're going back up to the sidewalk.
Oh, watch out. There's a hole
little bit of a
there.
dip right here.
Watch out for the hole.
All right, if we can just push, please.
Ella, how are you?
So sorry, folks. Excuse us. So sorry. Good luck. Excuse us.
Thank you.
So sorry.
How are you? Good to see you. Hey, man, how are you?
Hey, can we get a picture real quick?
Do it quick.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. 1, 2, 3.
You got it.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm walking back to
My
you.
mom is here.
Hey, I'm Joel.
Good to see you, man. How are you? Nice to see you. Keep telling me where it is. Where is it?
Mind if I get a quick picture?
You've been telling me that for the last 10 minutes.
Joe, good job
Hey,
yesterday.
man, thank you.
You guys have each other.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Hi. How are you? Joe's good enough. How you doing? Nice to see you.
What the hell, Joe?
Vice President, is third time the charm in Iowa for you? Is third time the charm for Iowa?
got the Iowa. I feel good about All right, what's going on?
Going this way? We gotta go to stage four now. Nice to see you
Unfortunately, Greta, he's already scheduled. He's right there.
Hey guys, no crowd back here.
All right.
Actually, we're going to send you the vice president. Everybody back, hold everyone else back.
C-SPAN's Campaign 2020 coverage continues. We are live in Des Moines, Iowa, an area set aside by the Des Moines Register. You can see the sign, Political Soapbox, a chance for the candidates to meet and greet with the fairgoers. Let's watch as the former vice president makes his way there, along with his wife, Jill.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Des Moines Register Political Soapbox. I'm Rachel Stassenberger, the politics editor for the newspaper. And we're just going to go over our ground rules once again. What are we? Iowa nice. That means no heckling, be kind to your fellow humans, no signs held up because then people can't see, and that's not very nice, is it? And without further ado, former Vice President Joe Biden.
Thank you very much. Hello, Iowa. Good to see you all. Come here, Jill. I'm Jill Biden's husband. Folks, I know I got 5 minutes. I'm going to be very brief and quick with you. I'm running for 3 reasons, and I've said it from the beginning. One, we have to restore the soul of this country. When we saw coming out of Charlottesville that hate and that venom that we saw, and then the president saying, when asked about the groups that met him as well as the young woman when she was killed, what did he think about it? He said there were very fine people in both groups. Very fine people. No president, sitting president, has ever said something like that. And the only thing that's happened is it's gotten worse. The way there's an attempt to divide us in a way that, in fact, is totally contrary to who we are. We really are in a fight to restore the soul of this country. We've led the world in the past because not just that we're the most powerful nation in the world, but it's been not the exercise of our power, it's been the power of our example. And around the rest of the world, we're losing that kind of influence in the world. And it's very damaging, both at home and abroad. The second reason I'm running, and I've said it at the outset, is I want to restore the backbone of this country. The backbone of this country is the middle class. The middle class built this country. Wall Street did not build this country. And the middle class made it possible for working class people to make their way up, the poor to have a road up. And when the middle class does well, everybody does well. The poor do well, the wealthy do well, and the middle class is the thing, the glue that holds us together. But it's falling apart right now. We're no longer the wealthiest middle class in the world. We're in a situation where you have a significant portion, over 50% of them, saying that their children will never have the life that they had. My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, you know, Joe, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. How can you, in fact, have dignity? How can you, in fact, have this notion of being able to look your kid in the eye and say everything's going to be okay if you don't have adequate health care? What do you do when you turn and you look at a child and has a pre-existing condition and there's nothing you can do about it? Or when your child or someone you love has a terminal disease and like my son did and come along. I can't imagine what it would have been like watching him and his coming home from Iraq with an incurable disease, given months to live. If an insurance company would be able to come in and say, by the way, your time's up, suffer in peace the last 4 months. It's about being able to have an education for your child that you know they need and you know they have an opportunity for. That's why I think we should be out there and we can afford it, tripling the amount of money we spend on what's called Title I schools, raising salaries for teachers, making sure that we deal really early on with all those crises. We know if we send kids to school at 3, 4, and 5 years old, they have exponentially greater prospects of succeeding. Every study has demonstrated that. We also know we need teachers. My wife is a full-time teacher, taught all during when we were vice president. The fact of the matter is we're in a situation now where for every one child, for every psychologist in the school system, there are 1,700 kids. What are we doing? What are we doing? We can afford to change this if we just get rid of some of this god-awful tax cut that was passed. The idea that we're in a position that we have $1.6 trillion worth of loopholes in the law. You can't possibly justify $400 to $500 billion of that. I can make sure that every single solitary person in the country has adequate health insurance, build on Obamacare, make sure it has a public option, increase the prospect of how we're going to lower drug prices. Time to go into it unless you ask me about it. How much time do I have left? How much? 15 seconds? Oh, to speak? Oh. Y'all are in real trouble then, man. That's a bad thing to tell me I got more time to speak. But look, folks, the idea that we can't gain control and give people a fighting chance is simply not correct. There used to be a basic bargain in America. And Republicans and Democrats agreed on it. We disagreed on the extent of it, but we agreed on it beginning after the end of the Roosevelt administration. And that is, if you contribute it to the well-being of the company you work with or the outfit you work with, you got to share in the benefits. And if it went well, you did well. That's no longer the case anymore. We've adopted a position in America that says the only people who entitled to rewards are stockholders because they're the only job creators. They've adopted this notion that the only people who are engaged in and able to get the rewards that corporations make are, in fact, the people who are the stockholders because they're the job creators. Well, I noticed the folks delivering the grain to the mill, they are job creators. I noticed the people who make the automobiles, they create jobs. I noticed the people who build this country are ordinary, hardworking people who've been given half a chance. And folks, the idea that we don't reward work as much as wealth is bizarre. We're in a situation where you have the top 1%, in fact, paying a lower tax rate than you do because it's mostly capital gains than more than a teacher, a firefighter, a cop. It's ridiculous. We should be rewarding work, not just wealth. We should be raising the corporate tax rate. So, folks, this is all within our capacity to do this. It's all within our capacity. We are so much money, so much in taxes, tax breaks for people who don't need them. And by the way, the wealthy know they don't need them. They're not bad people, but they don't need another tax cut. If you're making more than $10 million, man, I'm not your guy. You don't need a tax cut, and you know it. But people who need a tax cut are the people we make sure we can provide for free community college. We're in a situation where we can put every single solitary person who, in fact, is eligible, qualifies, and those people who've lost their jobs in their 50s because of automation go back to be retrained. We can do that all for about $6 billion a year. Eliminate one single little thing. It's called stepped-up basis. I didn't know what it was because I used to be listed as the poorest man in the Congress. I didn't understand it. What happened was, if you have a capital gain, you're about to cash it in, you get hit by a truck, God forbid, you leave it to your son or daughter, they pay no tax. That costs the government $17 billion a year out of $1.6 trillion. Eliminate that one tax. I can put every single qualified person in community college for free and/or trade school, cutting in half the cost of college. There's so many opportunities we have to change things in this country. Folks, in addition to that, you know, I love the fact that there is no global warming. You all know that out here in Iowa. You know it doesn't exist. I heard a farmer today on the TV who's a Republican say, well, I don't think it's caused by humans, but I have a problem. I have a problem. Well, there's a big problem. If we don't provide for people being able to drink clean position where they, in fact, can breathe clean air, we deprive them of their basic fundamental rights. First thing I would do as President of the United States, I'd rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, which I helped put together. But one other thing people don't know about that accord, it calls for what we negotiated. It requires those 190-some nations to up the ante every 2 years. Folks, we are responsible for 15% of global warming. The rest of the world is at 85%. We do everything perfectly, and they don't get on the stick, then we're all still in trouble. So, folks, I know how to deal with these world leaders. I know mostly every one of them. I've dealt with them. I know how to get it done, bring them back together again, because this is the existential threat to the United States, to the world, and it's real. And it's not just 11 years. We got about 10 years before we lose the opportunity to stop the erosion that's occurring now. It's real. And so, folks, we can make, but here's the deal. You saw what you did with wind. I remember out here early on at a state fair 10 years ago, 12 years ago, talking about wind and how do you provide for energy from wind. Well, guess what? A lot of people out here didn't think it was a good idea, and then you started doing it, created 10,000 new jobs, didn't cause any cancer, as the president says, generated growth. Well, folks, we can invest. We will invest $44 billion in research and development for new technologies that deal with sequestering of carbon. Your farmers out here can have an entire new life. They can be the first group of Americans to actually get carbon-free environment that they generate. And so, but in the process, if we do this, we'll create 10 million new jobs. And it's real. If we invest in research and development and technologies that are the technology of the future, we should become the net exporters of this capability and technology. We have the potential to do that. We underestimate our capacity so badly. And ladies and gentlemen, if you could go back to health care, we can control drug prices. My proposal is, and I ran what they call the moonshot, dealing with cancer. And something after that set up the Biden Cancer Initiative. And here's the point. We're on the verge of solving so many chronic diseases. It's within our capacity to do it. But we have to actually go out and we have to fund it. For example, now, those of you who've been in the Defense Department, those of you who've been in the military, know there's an outfit called DARPA. It's the thing that allows the military to do advanced research and everything from stealth technology, the internet, and all those other things. And they've done it, and they've invested because they brought the best minds in the world in to deal with the problems the military faces. We should be doing the same thing with health care. We should set up the same operation, a HARPA, meaning Health Care Advanced Research and Development. We put that in. Guess what? If we don't do something about the disease of Alzheimer's, which in fact is every single solitary bed in the United States of America in a hospital will be filled with an Alzheimer's patient within 20 years. No drug company is going to make that kind of investment that it takes, but we should be investing the billions of dollars we can, just like we did in the Defense Department. With that, obesity, deal with all the chronic diseases that are out there. We have the capacity to break through. We can now do 1 billion calculations per second. We are so far advanced that we're just keeping our head in the sand. We should be investing in that, not investing in more tax cuts for the very wealthy. Lastly, I'd say the third reason I'm running, because I want to get to your questions, is to unite the country. Folks, I'm told by some of my colleagues that you can't unite the country, that Biden, on one side, they make, well, Biden's kind of been around too long. The other side is Biden's naive. Well, I don't know. I've been around a long time. You'd think being around a long time, you'd learn a little something, you know? And the thing I've learned is that the American people, after 4 years, after 3 years already of this guy, have decided that a lot of what he's talking about is hokum. Look what happened this last election in 2018 around the country. I went into over 24 states and over 69 candidates. And I went into those purple states and those red states as well. And in those states, we won back 41 seats, beating Republicans. Why we did it? By the way, not all Republicans. I want to represent everybody. But here's the deal. The fact of the matter is, we ran on health care. It wasn't until they started taking away health care, everybody realized how important it was that you're able to cover pre-existing conditions. 20 million more people, over 100,000 people who, in fact, were able to get coverage because of pre-existing conditions. And so we go on and on. What the proposal is, we're able to go out and make sure that everybody is protected by building on Obamacare, restoring the historic deal that we did. In addition to that, adding a Medicare-like option to it so you can buy into that if you wish to do it. But you're able to keep, if you like your employer-based policy, you can keep that policy as long as they keep the policy. And so the folks of the matter is, it costs a lot of money. It cost about $740 billion over 10 years. Well, guess what? It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $30 trillion what the other plans cost, which are going to raise middle-class taxes. Bernie's honest enough to tell you that. There's going to have to be a tax. There's going to have to be withholding tax on your, from your paychecks. Folks, we can cover everybody, and we can do it in a way that allows people the choice that they want. If they don't like what they have, they can buy in immediately. So, folks, look, in terms of unifying the country, you know, we've never lived up to it, but America has been an idea. It's the most unique idea in all the world, not a joke. There's not, only thing that can defeat America is America. There's no army strong enough, no dictator powerful enough, no ocean wide enough that in fact can overcome what we're able to do. We can do whatever we want to do if we remember we can do it together. Folks, you know, the reason I did my last announcement in Philadelphia was to make a point that we are a nation that is unique. We hold these truths self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, etc. We've never fully lived up to that, but we've never abandoned it before. We've never walked away from it. Jefferson, who wrote it, didn't live up to it. He had slaves. We've never fully lived, but every single generation, has bent the arc more toward inclusion. Every generation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why we're who we are. We are the most unique idea. It's an idea we cannot abandon. And folks, we are better prepared to own the 21st century than any nation in the world by a long shot. When I got elected as a 29-year-old kid to the Senate, I was labeled this young idealist. I was labeled this guy who, in fact, was optimistic. The fact of the matter is I'm more optimistic today, with one exception, than I've ever been. If we get rid of Donald Trump, we have a clear path. Folks, we have the most productive workers in the world. Our workers are 3 times as productive, as a matter of fact, as workers in Asia. We're in a situation where we have more great research universities in the United States than all the rest of the combined. And every major change that's occurred in the last 20 years has come out of a research university. People think they're federal agencies. They're not. You own them. You pay for them. They belong to you, the American people. Thirdly, we're in a position where we have the most agile venture capitalists in the world. We're in a position where we also have one of the best educated publics in the world if we, in fact, invest in them. And so, folks, look, there isn't anybody, there isn't any country in the world that can compete with us if we invest in our people, if we invest in who we are, if we remember who we are. There's not a single thing we've been unable to do. It's time, and this is my concluding comment to y'all, it's time to remember who in God's name we are. This is the United States of America. There's nothing we've ever decided to do we've been unable to do, period. And that's not hyperbole. We have never, never, never failed when we're together. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get up. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Even his supporters know who he is. We got to let them know who we are. We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. And so, folks, if you're interested, join me. I could use the help because we must defeat this president to change the trajectory of this country. Thank you all very, very much. I guess I take questions now, huh? Well, I'll start. Don't let anybody know I didn't use all my time. I have a bad reputation of going over all the time. Yes, sir. Question. Do I go down here and give you a mic or?
When can I buy you an ice cream? And who is your favorite historical figure and who's not a president and why?
Well, I think maybe, yes, you can buy me another ice cream. I already had one. He said, can I buy you an ice cream? And who is my favorite historical figure? I think maybe my favorite historical figure is maybe there's a couple philosophers that I find that, in fact, understood about human nature better than most people. But in terms of political figures, I think that maybe my favorite political figure would, it's a tough call, but I would have to say it's those presidents and those people who gave America hope, made them believe in who they are. And I'd have to start off, I know you said not a president, I have to start off with Jefferson, even though he didn't live up to it. He's the guy that wrote that incredible document. And I'd have to say that there are a number of people who, in fact, have moved in a direction to provide us with the kind of hope and expectation about what we can do. My favorite line from John Kennedy's speech about going to the moon wasn't what most people remember. The one I remember the most is when he said, we're doing this because we refuse to postpone. I refuse to postpone any longer what we can do in this country. It's time to get the hell up and start to move. Yes, ma'am.
Did they cancel flights?
The lady said, thank you for mentioning Alzheimer's. You know that it's already costing Americans $290 billion a year right now. What is my plan? My plan is to gather up, and I've met with most of the leading scientists in the country already. My plan is to set up a system whereby we actually go out and invest the kind of money, which we're talking billions of dollars in terms of the research, that no company, no drug company wants to or can do because they can't take the risk. And I'm tired of being told that we don't have a clear answer. We found clear answers. We used to think, for example, cancer was a single cell that, in fact, resided in different parts of the body. We now know there are 204 distinct types of cancer that require different kinds of therapies. The same kind of research has to take place dealing with Alzheimer's. And the reason is not just to help people who have or in fact, are likely to get Alzheimer's, but it saves the American. It's a gigantic positive investment because we pay for it one way or another. And we can change the nature of how people, but it requires an absolute dedication to say, we are going to invest, we can do it, and it's going to take billions of dollars to do it, and we can afford to do it. We can't afford not to do it. Yes, ma'am. Question is, he said there's been a number of, my time's up.
Answer quickly. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. The courts, he said, have turned very, very strong to the right. The point is, I will not appoint anyone to the court. If you notice, the people, when I presided over more Supreme Court hearings than anyone ever has, just because I was chairman for such a long time of that. The fact of the matter is, the people I'll put in the court are the people like a woman who worked for me, Elena Kagan. The people I put on the court are people that we put on the court who, in fact, are the folks who understand there's a fundamental thing, those are your lawyers. The question is, are there unenumerated rights in the Constitution? Fancy way of saying that, unless you acknowledge that there is a right of privacy in the Constitution, as most leading scholars agree, that, in fact, you will not be able to protect a woman's right to choose. You will not be able to protect all the things that we seem to care so much about. I will not appoint anyone to the court who does not share that basic philosophy. Thank you. I'll come and answer your question, okay? I'm not allowed to answer anymore. I'm going to get dragged off the stage. As my grandpa would say every time I left his house, he'd say, Joey, keep the faith. And my grandmother yelled, no, Joey, spread it. Go spread the faith.
So your staff is waiting for you here? No, we can't have you. We can't. Yep. So for the meeting.
Then he like buys another kid ice cream, and then
He's young.
so the Joe space.
Yeah, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm
Okay.
first question.
Okay.
So sorry.
I can crouch down. I can
Yeah.
whatever I like. There you go.
You crouch down. I'm still shorter than you.
I don't want to be in anyone's shot. I promise. I'm not trying to.
You're good, aren't you?
Annie, do you
Two candidates today, many more in the days ahead at the Iowa State Fair, and we are waiting for former Vice President Joe Biden to take questions from reporters in the area just adjacent to this podium, organized by the Des Moines Register. The Iowa State Fair is one of the largest and oldest state fairs in the country. Last year, more than 1 million people attending over the 11-day period, and many more expected this year as well, including the presidential candidates. A live aerial view from Des Moines, Iowa, and our coverage continues through the weekend and into next week. Also, a reminder, we will have live coverage of what is known as the annual Wingding Dinner in Clear Lake, Iowa. That gets underway tomorrow evening with 20 of the candidates participating at 7 o'clock Eastern Time here on C-SPAN and live on C-SPAN Radio. Of course, you can check out all of our coverage on the free C-SPAN Radio app. Here's a look at the schedule for tomorrow. All times are Eastern. Former Housing Secretary Julian Castro will kick things off at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, followed by businessman Andrew Yang. John Delaney, former congressman from Maryland, at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Marianne Williamson at 2:30 Eastern Time, and then Representative Tulsi Gabbard at about 3:15 Eastern Time on Friday afternoon. And then into Saturday, Governor Jay Inslee at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, followed by Senator Kamala Harris at 11:30 Eastern Time. And then early in the afternoon at about 1:45 Eastern Time, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar. That's our coverage on Saturday. Also speaking, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand at 3:15 Eastern Time. Former Governor John Hickenlooper at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, followed by Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is moving up in the polls based on the latest Quinnipiac survey in Iowa. And then Senator Cory Booker, who will conclude things at about 5:30 Eastern Time. That's our coverage on Saturday. It will, of course, continue into Sunday through early next week. On Sunday, former Governor Bill Weld at 12:15 Eastern Time, followed by businessman and billionaire Tom Steyer, who will join us after his appearance on C-SPAN to take your calls and questions, along with Governor Weld. Our C-SPAN bus is there this weekend. Senator Michael Bennet at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, followed by Senator Bernie Sanders at 4:45 Eastern Time. And then New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio will be speaking following Senator Sanders. So that's our coverage on Sunday, and you can follow all of it online at cspan.org. More than 500 vendors at the Iowa State Fair, and former Vice President Joe Biden taking questions from reporters adjacent to what's known as the Soapbox location, organized by the Des Moines Register, where the candidates speak to fairgoers. Here's the former Vice President.
Mr. Vice President, you talk about the need to work with Republicans and also the need to initiate new gun control options. You worked on this during the Obama administration over an extended period of time, especially after Sandy Hook. What's different now that isn't then that you might actually be able to get these things passed?
What's different now is we now have the House back, number one. Number two, I think we're going to win some Senate. Number three, you have a majority of the members of the NRA understanding that we should do something about this. They agree, the majority of the members of the NRA. And the idea that what's happened lately does not go to the core of who we are. It violates no one's Second Amendment right to say that you can't own certain weapons. You're not allowed to own a bazooka. You can't own a flamethrower. You can't own a lot. Those who say the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots, they making the case you got to have enough firepower to take on the government if they come after you. Well, you need a lot more than an AK-47 or an AR-15. The point of the matter is they are for no reason other than to kill people. Any guy out there or woman out there who's a hunter tells me they need a clip with 15, 20, 30, or 100 rounds, they shouldn't be hunting. They're very bad aim. So the point of the matter is we can get it done and we can get background checks done. We can get it done because the public is finally at the point where they are sick of it. It's sick of it. And I've got it done once before, and I can get it done again.
Sir, if you can't get it done, would you take some executive action if you couldn't get a deal, and if so, what?
Well, I would take a number of executive actions we did in our administration that relate to background checks and the rest. But here's, unlike Trump, I know there's a Constitution. I am not allowed to just by fiat decide that as President of the United States, I, by executive action, am going to take action that requires a co-equal branch of government, the Congress, to support it. That's a requirement. So there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can change in terms of background checks and gun show loopholes and the rest. But in terms of dealing with the core issue of getting assault weapons off the street, limiting the number of bullets that can be in a single clip, that requires legislation. As I said, I'm the only guy that did it nationally before with the help of Dianne Feinstein. We also did the background checks bill with, in fact, the whole Brady bill. I was a leader on that. We can do it again. The public gets it. They get it now.
Mr. President, do you believe that the president is a white supremacist?
I believe everything the president says is done encourages white supremacists. And I'm not sure there's much of a distinction. As a matter of fact, it may be even worse. In fact, if you're out there trying to, in fact, curry the favor of white supremacists or any group that, in fact, is anathema to everything we believe. So whether he is or is not a white supremacist, he encourages them. Everything he does, he speaks to them. He's afraid to take them on. And if you notice, the one time he used the word white supremacy, he was, it was not, he talked about sleepy. He was awful sleepy in the way in which he talked about it.
Mr. Vice President, you've campaigned in Iowa several times before without some success. What makes this time different?
I can afford to do it now. I've got a lot of support. And I've been able to raise over almost 300,000 contributors that allow me to be able to compete and put together a staff. I think we're now in a position where we'll have as many headquarters open. Look, people want to be asked. People want to be asked. They got to have an organization. And I think you're going to see we put together a full-blown organization. And, it's way early on. I know the polls have me ahead by 10 or 12 points to the next person, but it's early. It's real early. I plan on being here to earn the vote of Iowans.
Mr. Vice President, what's your message to the farmers who are caught in the middle of President Trump's trade war, but they say he's doing the right thing? It's just going to cause them a little financial pain in the meantime.
I think it's going to cause them a lot more than a little financial pain. I think it's going to cause a lot of them to go bankrupt. I think it's going to cause an awful lot of ancillary industries like the industries that make the tractors and make all the farm equipment. They're going to be in real trouble. We're focusing on the wrong thing with China. I plan on, and I've argued that we should be very tough with China. China is stealing our intellectual property. China is stealing industries from us. And unless we, in fact, are able to unite the world in taking on China, they're going to set the rules of the road. They're going to be in a position. And what we're doing now is we're going about it the wrong way. China is a problem. They're a security problem. They're a technology problem, but they're investing more money, for example, in research and development than we are, because they're stealing an awful lot of our intellectual property.
Mr. Vice President, first of all,
Hello.
Since 1988, when you first came to Iowa, many repeat candidates have become nominees, but none of them have become president. How do you plan to change that? How do you? It seems voters have been voting for change. How do you get them to vote for you?
Well, I think that first of all, I think I represent the change we need. The issues before us now are in my wheelhouse. The things I've worked on my whole life, the things that I have been involved in, whether it's supporting the middle class, whether it's dealing with international relations. I know all these world leaders, and I've demonstrated I can command their respect. Whether or not it's dealing with issues relating to the issues that allow us to be a single nation, bringing people together. And so, look, and
you
again...
need to electrify them to do that? How do you do that?
Look at the polls. So far, so good. So I do it by being me. Look, no one's ever, including reporters cover me all the time, no one's ever doubted I mean what I say. The problem is sometimes I say all that I mean. I think what's going on now is people are looking for, at least if they're not, I have a problem. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for honesty, looking for someone who has new ideas about how to deal with these things. Look, one of the things I hope comes with my longevity in American politics is the fact that I've been able to gain a little bit of wisdom along the way and what needs to be done. And it's clear to me what needs to be done is totally within our capacity to do it without, in fact, doing anything other than making the country better.
Yesterday, while you were speaking in Burlington, while the president was traveling the country, Immigration Customs Enforcement was conducting these raids at meat processing plants in Mississippi. Is that the right approach? Is this interior enforcement what the immigration?
No. What we should be focused on, number one, is we should be focused on having a comprehensive immigration plan that provides a pathway to citizenship for people who are here that are undocumented. We should be, in fact, legalizing Dreamers right now. And there's over 4 million, counting their families, over 10 million people. We should be uniting families, not separating families. And we should, in fact, have an actual program whereby you're able to find an avenue to have your asylum case heard. And this idea of walking away from dealing with allowing people to have asylum hearings in the United States is bizarre. That's not who we are. That's not who we are as a country. And folks, when you go out there, there's no need to separate children from their families. There's no need to put people in cages. At the end of our administration, we found that when you say, show up at such and such a date, they show up. We don't need to do this. And by the way, the people, if anybody should be deported, maybe, well, I shouldn't get into that.
Mr. Vice
on China. What are you going to do differently?
Say again, I'm sorry?
Your administration had 8 years to deal with China.
Well, I tell you what,
issues.
We did an awful lot with China. And what we did with China, first of all, was we got them to join the Paris Peace Accord, the Climate Accord. We got them to change their direction in a number of areas in terms of foreign policy. But here's the other thing we did. When China, for example, as you know, I spent more time with Xi Jinping than any elected official up at that time, any world leader. And I remember him asking me when I went over to meet with he and his folks about whether or not the air identification zones he set up in the South China Sea. I said, we're not going to pay attention. He said, what do you expect us to do, take it down? I said, I don't know what you should, but I tell you what, we're going to fly right through it. So we flew B-52s right through it. We're sending our aircraft carriers through it. We're sending our folks through it. China is not going to make the rules of the game if we, in fact, invest in our workers, if we invest in leading the world again, bringing the rest of the world together to make sure that we can put enough pressure on China. They're going to write the rules of the road, and we are. We make up 25% of the world's economy, but we need... You want me to speak in this? So the answer is, and remember, at the front end of the administration, we're losing 800,000 jobs a month. Everything landed on the president's desk but locust. The reason why we're the longest expansion ever is because of what Barack Obama and our administration did. And so, but now is the time to understand that China means what they say. This new Belt and Road road is what they're doing. They're exporting coal. They're exporting pollution, carbon producing energy. We have to compete. So what have we done with this guy? We've stepped back from the world. We said we're out. We're not going to pay any attention. We've got to confront them across the board. And China's problems compared to the ones we face, they pale in comparison to the opportunities we have. Xi Jinping would change places with the president's problems in a heartbeat. We're in a situation where they don't have enough water, God bless them. They're talking about spending close to $1 trillion to get water to their population. They have the highest rates of cancer deaths in the world. In the next 10 years, more people are going to die of cancer in China because of pollution than the rest of the world combined. They have an aging population where they have no replacement workers for themselves. The East and West, what they're doing with Uyghurs in the western part of their country is shameful. But what are we doing? We are, instead of dealing with our allies, staying together, sticking with South Korea, sticking with Japan, sticking with India. We are walking away. We are walking away. And when's the last time you ever heard a president say he has a love affair with a guy who's a thug, who had his uncle's brains blown out sitting across the table? So anyway.
Before you go, Mr. Biden, question about gun violence. You said that the difference now would be that you have more votes in the House, more votes in the Senate, but you had the House and you had the Senate when you and Barack Obama were in office the first time. And then there was Sandy Hook and you had bipartisan support for background check bills and it didn't happen. So what exactly would be different this time? Why are you the one to change that?
Because I've done it before. As President of the United States, I met with every one of those Sandy Hook family members. Every one of them. I met the same with every one of the people that got killed in the Pulse nightclub. I met with every one of those kids down in Florida that in fact were in that. So I understand it. People know I know it. They know I understand it. I've beaten them before and I can rally support to beat them again.
Should they end the legislative filibuster if that's what's needed to pass gun reform?
I think we have to make that call on the fly. Ending the filibuster is a very dangerous thing to do because it's been used by progressives our whole time to make sure that we did not get rolled over when the Republicans had, when you talk and you start off and you say, let's get rid of the filibuster. It sounds great till they own it all. You know what I mean? It sounds great. Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much.
What about you orchestrated that? Why should they trust you?
Who are you?
Very big with the Washington Examiner. Why?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Solyndra. You already orchestrated that. You're calling for more green energy subsidies. Why should people trust you now?
Because we should not be supporting any of these subsidies. Period. All right. Thank you, guys. Am I going that way? I know you're not hot.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. So sorry.
No, you're okay. No worries.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you know what? I'm good, thank
You gotta keep your staff around. You'll hear it from me again, but just trying to keep everyone going. Thank you. So be on one side, preferably. I would ask the ones there to stay back and maybe have a line in this line.
All right, moving on. Can I do it outside? I don't have a pen and they won't let me sign it. The North I promised I wouldn't sign anything here.
I'm going to take a selfie as you walk by.
Quick. You got it. No, you took it. You got it. There you go. Hey, man, how are you? Good to see you. You're going the right way?
Joe, you're looking great.
Thank you. All right. Lately. Yeah, thank you. Is that right? They won't let me do it here.
This is the woman who asked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What we can do, we have to try. We have to try.
Son must run to the fair with all the chairs.
So far, you can see how much fun it is. No, that's good.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
I'm trying. Here, give me your book.
Hey, man. If you do it out here, they won't let me sign here. If you do it out here, okay?
Hey, Joe, meet Andrew. Enjoy this.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing, pal?
He's got a great shirt
I
on.
like your shirt. Whoa. Good to see you, Andrew.
I miss Joe Biden.
Mr. Biden, a question. Instead of fighting the NRA, how about changing the law? If anybody uses a weapon, it's life in prison. If they pull the trigger, it's automatic death.
Well, because that's not going to stop it, because that's not going to take it off the road.
It will, it helps.
It could help. All right, man.
I love that your wife has helped us so much.
Hey, by the way, yeah, she ran the program in the USA.
Mr. Biden. Hey guys, come on, please don't play. Please don't play right there.
Mr. Vice President, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm a college student in Iowa, and I was wondering, can you denounce the hate group Antifa?
The what?
The hate group Antifa. Denounce Antifa.
The answer is, I denounce all hate groups. All right, here we go. I know. Where are we going? Straight ahead? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm watching you shoot. Joe, anything to say about Jeffrey Epstein? Anything to say about the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, Joe? Joe, anything to say? Nothing good. Which way am I going?
Please, jump ahead, push ahead. You can stay with us, just give me a little space, please.
Guys, I'm okay. I'm okay.
We need to clear a path, please. You all can leave.
We are following the former vice president with what's known as Live View, which allows us to stay live with the candidates. But as more people have cell phones, that's why the signal will often break up. This is an aerial view of the Iowa State Fair, and we'll try to go back, but we hope you bear with us. We've been giving you live coverage from the fairgrounds in Des Moines, Iowa. Of course, the state with the first in the nation presidential primary, and the candidates there beginning today.